Evening was settling over the old house by the quiet lake. The water was smooth like a mirror, disturbed only by the occasional whisper of the wind. The house had stood empty for many years, but one autumn evening, a young woman named Alina arrived. She had inherited the house from a distant relative she had never met. All she knew about him was that he had lived here alone, never welcomed visitors, and rarely went to town. Some said he was a strange man, but beyond that, no one knew much. Alina wasn't afraid of solitude. She had come here to escape the noise of the city, to take some time for herself, and to bring the house back to life. At first glance, she liked it, the old wooden structure with intricate shutters, a spacious terrace overlooking the lake. The only thing that unsettled her was the strange feeling that someone was watching her. That first night, she heard a faint scratching at the window. She dismissed it as the wind or a tree branch and went back to sleep. But the next night, the sounds became clearer, soft, deliberate footsteps in the hallway. Alina decided to check. There was no one there. Days passed. The feeling of being watched only grew stronger. Sometimes in the mirror, she thought she saw something behind her, just a flicker, gone in an instant. Doors she was sure she had closed were found slightly open. Then, one evening, as she sat on the terrace staring at the dark lake, she noticed something standing on the far shore. A tall, shadowy figure. It wasn't moving. It was just watching her. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked, looked away for just a second, and when she looked back, the figure was gone. The next day, while going through old belongings in the basement, she found a journal. It belonged to her late relative. As she flipped through the yellowed pages, one entry sent chills down her spine. "I see him every night. He stands by the water waiting. I don't know who he is, but I'm afraid. I shouldn't have stayed here alone. He calls for me. But I won't go." Alina shut the journal, a cold shiver running down her back. That night she couldn't sleep. The house no longer felt like her own. And then she heard it again, a soft, steady knock at the window. Slowly, she turned her head and saw a reflection, but the problem was there was no one behind her. Alina stood frozen in the doorway. The footprints were fresh, wet, leading from the water to her door. Someone had been here, or something. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps. She forced herself to step forward, her eyes scanning the darkness, the empty lake, the silent forest. Nothing. The knocking didn't come again, but now she knew. It wanted her to come to the water. The next morning, she made a decision. She had to leave. Now, she packed quickly, her hands trembling as she shoved clothes into a suitcase. She didn't care about leaving things behind, she just needed to go. When everything was ready, she got into her car, turned the key. The engine sputtered. Then silence. She tried again. Nothing. A deep dread settled over her. Something wouldn't let her leave. Her gaze was drawn to the lake. She could hear it now, a faint whisper in the wind, calling her, pulling her in. She stepped out of the car, feeling as if she were moving in a dream. The lake was impossibly still, the air heavy, thick. She walked to the water's edge, heart hammering in her chest. Then she looked down and saw him. The dark figure stood right behind her, his reflection clear in the water. But she didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She felt him. A whisper, soft as a breath, curled around her mind. "Stay. You can't leave." He couldn't either. Alina's pulse pounded in her ears. Then she saw something even worse. Her feet, in the reflection, they were bare. Like the footprints at the door, like his. Her hands shook as she reached out, just barely touching the surface of the water. And in that instant, a flood of memories crashed into her.